Thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who have overcome or those who are in the process of overcoming any life topic. We have three objectives with this podcast series. Our first objective is we want you to know that whatever you're experiencing in life, whatever you're encountering, you're not alone. We want to join you to let you know that we together can help you through whatever challenge you may have that at the time may seem too difficult to be able to overcome. Our second objective is to help you determine with a very confident resolve there are multiple solutions, multiple factors involved in any life encounter. It's a matter of thinking into and thinking through the life situation you are encountering to determine the various options, the various solutions that are available to you. Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If whatever you're experiencing is a result of a decision you made sometime in the past, such that if you had a life redo, you would make a different decision, we want to help you determine the objective facts and factors to evaluate to help you reach a more informed decision. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty. Together, we are the Cooper Culture, and the Cooper Culture is sponsoring this podcast series. Today, we feature Linda Bjork, who tells a story of her life beginning in childhood, such that she had various things happen to her. She chronicles several major events in her life that were her personal mountains to which she overcame, and she is a model of resilience. But Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Linda's testimony?
Ron, Linda shares with us her journey through one of the mountains of depression, masking it, and depression bringing her to the point of crushing her. She then walks us through her process of overcoming depression, the peace and the freedom she received from the stronghold of this depression. This is a powerful story.
Let's listen and learn together how Linda overcame many of the obstacles in her life, but she was resilient enough to look forward and overcome the many things in her life. Let's listen together and learn. Linda, it's just great to have you with us. I want to thank you on behalf of our listeners for taking time out of your schedule to relive a bit of your story, but more so, the most important part is what have you learned from your life experiences that we can pass on to our listeners? So Linda, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. And I love what you're doing. Overcomers, overcoming. And I think that's really what life is about. We all have challenges in our lives, but we need to learn how to be resilient and to be able to overcome these things and to move forward.
I love it. Resilience. Right there is possibly a topic for another episode. We need to learn how to be resilient, how to come back from. There was a book written, I do not remember the author. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. And so as we are resilient, we know we're always going to fail forward. Nothing is going to keep us down. But Linda, I, Marty, and our listeners are very interested in just a brief recounting of your past. What is it you have overcome and our listeners are going to gain from all this?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to share my story, because my story, if it doesn't help somebody else, it's not worth it. So perhaps you're familiar with the Japanese art form called kintsugi, where they take broken pottery and then they reassemble and repair it using this mixture of lacquer and gold dust, and it creates something beautiful, something unique, something that's actually stronger than it was before. And that process changes it from broken to beautiful. And I feel that that's what my story is. It's a transformation from broken to beautiful. And I think that there's different levels of broken. Like, for example, say you're walking across the street, you accidentally drop your cell phone and the screen cracks, and you might think, oh, shoot, I broke my phone. And then you pick it up and then you just keep using it because it still works. For me, basic brokenness was struggling with lifelong feelings that I'm not good enough. I don't matter. In fact, I'm invisible. And I felt broken but I could still function. I could still live my life. Then there's another level of broken. For example, you're walking across the street, you accidentally drop your cell phone, and then a truck runs it over. Now we have a different situation. It's not just broken, it is crushed and it doesn't function very well. And for me, being crushed was struggling with depression and social anxiety, where it felt like my comfort zone absolutely collapsed. And I did not feel safe, not anywhere, not with anyone. And I couldn't feel happy, regardless of the circumstances around me. It was like I was in a deep, dark pit. So what was it that broke me, that crushed me, that ran me over? Well, we all have challenges and struggles in our lives. I am no exception. I've dealt with poverty, I've dealt with sickness, and I've dealt with trauma. Once I had my mouth wired shut for 6 weeks so that my broken jaw could heal. And during that time, I couldn't talk. I couldn't eat. The only sustenance I could get was what I could suck through a straw. I've also been in a small airplane when the engine blew up and smoke is everywhere and oil is dripping at my feet and the plane is shaking. And I thought, oh, wow, we're going down. And there's no way we're going to make it to a runway. And we had to do an emergency landing. And I wasn't sure if we would survive. And of course, I hoped that we wouldn't hurt property or people on the ground. It was a very scary situation. I've also arrived at the scene of a motorcycle accident in time to see my son's broken body lying in the middle of an intersection, surrounded by flashing lights and personnel. And that is an image that I'll never forget. I also once took my beautiful young teenage daughter in for some outpatient surgery, simple procedure, cutting, cauterizing to help with some female issues she was having. And the procedure was done. The doctor said, looks good, take her home, let her rest. A little bleeding is normal, but watch for blood clots and for infection. I said, okay. So I took her home, I put her to bed. And then every half hour or so, I would kind of tiptoe to her room and check on her and see if she was doing okay. And she was fine. She was sleeping. And after several hours, I got a text. She's in her room. I'm in the kitchen. And she says, Mom, will you come to my room? I need to show you something. And so I walked to her room and I said, hey, you're awake. How are you doing? And she didn't answer me with words. Instead, she just threw off the covers and she was soaked in blood from her chest all the way down to her feet. And there aren't words to describe the panic and the terror that I felt. Also, horrible guilt because I had been checking on her this whole time and I thought she was okay. And in reality, she was bleeding to death right under my nose. And it was terrifying. I've also been awoken in the middle of the night with a phone call that my beautiful 9-month-old grandson had a seizure and he was not expected to make it through the night. They life flighted him to Primary Children's Hospital where they did emergency surgery to try to relieve the pressure off of his brain, followed by another very delicate brain surgery where they went from the top all the way to the bottom of his skull to try to repair the problem, to try to preserve his life. And they were successful in preserving his life. But unfortunately, during this ordeal, he did sustain brain damage. I also have another beautiful grandchild who was diagnosed with cancer at age 5 months. So we all have challenges and we all have struggles and trials in our lives. And we do the very best we can to be able to handle it and to move forward. But sometimes something happens that's so big or so unexpected, or maybe one thing right after another, where we become overwhelmed and we don't handle it very well. And when we're in that state, if we're not careful, we can slip into depression. And that is what happened with me. It was as if I had fallen into a deep, dark hole. And it was so deep that it was like sunlight and hope and happiness could not reach me. It couldn't get down to me. And as I looked around, there are no windows, there are no doors in this deep, dark pit. And I couldn't see any way out. I thought, well, I guess this is my new reality. From here on out, this is as good as it gets. And the best that I could ever hope for was to be able to endure in misery for the rest of my life. And I stayed in that place for about 5 years, but almost no one knew it because I was very good at masking. I was very good at just pretending that everything was normal. So people weren't aware that I was struggling. Well, about this time, my sister, who was studying to become a life coach, she was preparing this women's retreat. She'd rented this condo in the mountains, and she was going to invite a group of women to come and talk about how to be happy and live fulfilled. And she invited me. And she had no idea what I was going through. And when I received her invitation, it made me sick. I thought, there is no way. I can't handle being around other people, being around strangers day and night for 3 days. And besides, nothing works. There's nothing that's going to help me because I'm stuck. I'm stuck in a deep, dark pit with no doors and no windows. But even though I didn't want to go, the idea wouldn't leave my mind. And so I gathered my courage together and I went. And I'm so very glad I did, because that decision changed my life. It was as if my sister lowered a ladder into my deep, dark hole, and she showed me a way to climb out. And it was very much a ladder. It was not an elevator. It was not a press of a button and instantly I was all better. It took time. It took effort, and it was hard, but it worked. And that's the magic. I've learned that healing and that resilience that comes is not like flipping on a light switch where it's instant and then all of a sudden, woohoo, we're all better. It's more like a sunrise where the changes are gradual. And the change from moment to moment might be imperceptible, but it does come, and it is beautiful and it is powerful. I've also learned from my experience that those feelings that I have had of being broken and of being crushed are actually quite common, even among people who look like they have it all together, because they might be masking like I was masking. And I wrote a book about my experience. It's called Crushed: A Journey Through Depression. And I've received so many letters from people who have said, wow, I felt like I was reading my story. I felt like you were in my head. And they felt seen and they felt understood. And it gave them hope that they could heal too. And this is interesting. It's not just from people struggling with depression and anxiety, but all kinds of people dealing with all kinds of different issues. Because even though our life experiences are very different, those feelings and the emotions that we have are very similar and relatable. And that is what Crushed is about. I've opened myself, allowed myself to be vulnerable to help other people, because I want to be someone who offers a ladder to anyone who feels trapped in a dark place.
Linda, that's a great testimony, and we appreciate your heart. Marty and I, too, want to help people overcome anything in life. Talk to us a little bit about what seems to be your early beginning of not knowing yourself, maybe not knowing where you fit in. You made the statement, almost no one knew what you were going through. You masked. I'm wondering if there's a correlation from maybe early in your life, not being certain of yourself, maybe not knowing where you fit in. I don't want to try to put words you would not use, but was that somewhat of Linda Bjork's early beginning? And did you possibly feel that, oh, I'm just destined for all of this trauma in my life?
That is an interesting and very perceptive question. So I'm going to say yes and no. I did not feel like I was always destined to have misery in my life. I felt like I was doing my best to be positive and to be optimistic. And I never, ever thought that I would be someone who would have to deal with depression. I thought that was for quote unquote weaker people, and that I would be strong. But your comment about what my childhood and how that might influence my desire to mask, I think you've hit on a very good point. I mentioned before that I felt broken lifelong, and then the crushed came. And the broken to me was that I was invisible. I wasn't important. I did not matter. And that did occur from something that happened in my childhood, where some events took place in my life. I misinterpreted, and I assumed that meant, okay, because this happened, that means that I am unworthy of love. I do not matter, and I need to just stay out of everybody's way. And so it is possible that carrying those kinds of feelings over to, where someone might want to help me, and my natural response might be, oh, you don't want to help me because I don't matter. I'm not important. So that could be part of the reason of masking, which actually I hadn't thought of before. So thank you.
Linda, thank you. And I'm very interested, our listeners are very interested knowing possibly a little bit more about broken. You did not feel important. Is there maybe a hidden meaning behind this? Do you haven't expressed yet that maybe you felt isolated, somewhat relationally abandoned? Take us back, maybe even into high school. Did you have all the friends that you wanted, or was that a part of your life that built for X number of years to where you just never felt important? Very interested in this, and I have a very specific reason in asking.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we're going to go back before high school. I was 6 years old. And the story is like this. I have wonderful parents. I have a mother and a father, and they're terrific. I am the sixth of 7 children. And when I was 6 years old, my oldest sister got married, and she moved away, 2,000 miles away. And there were lots of issues relating to my mother's heartache of feeling abandoned. And at that point, it broke her. It crushed her. It was something that was, there's more to the story, but in a nutshell, it crushed her. And she felt like, wow, I'm a mom, and I have given my all to my children. And the thank that I get is that you abandoned me, you move across the country. And this was a long, long time ago, before people had cell phones, and there wasn't that connection that you could have from a distance. And so at the time, because of finances and other reasons, she had a strict limit where you were allowed 1 phone call a month and 1 visit every 2 years. And she felt abandoned. She felt rejected, all these kinds of things. So in her trying to protect herself, she thought, well, if that's what kids do to you, then I just won't get close to any of my kids. And so she absolutely shut me off. And it was like, that one was like a light switch where, things are great. And then all of a sudden, it was literally like I no longer existed to her while she worked through her issues. And I was just a little kid, so I didn't understand. And all I thought was, wow, something has changed. What did I do wrong? Man, it must have been awful. And I guess I'm not lovable. My mom's a great person. She loves people, but she doesn't love me. So it's got to be something about me specifically. And then some other events took place that in my mind just cemented that belief. And I thought from then on, okay, there are people in this world that matter. There are people in this world that are deserving of love and belonging. But I'm not one of those people. And so it's interesting. Brene Brown talks about how our feelings, if you boil it down to just that one little nugget, it's the belief of whether or not we're worthy of love and belonging. And I felt very strongly that, nope, not me. So anyway, so now I'd like to hear your specific reason of why we went in that direction.
No, that's very important to know, Linda, that Marty and I are all about relationships. A lot of what happens to us is our perception of relationships, right or wrong, but it's our perception of relationships. If I feel abandoned, it may not matter what anyone else says. I just feel abandoned. If I feel I cannot express myself, that may keep me from expressing myself, even though the other person may say, well, no, you always could. Well, if I don't feel I can, that's going to be the dominating, overpowering factor, and I won't. And so these are the kind of dynamics, Linda, that our listeners are very interested in knowing. And what I'm building up toward is, if we in our listening audience see some of the traits you are talking about, the traits, attributes, some of these symptoms, is it possible that we could intervene in a very relational way? And I do not ever want to label, stigmatize, or anything such as that. But if we can see some of the symptoms that might lead us to think that you have the propensity to feel you do not matter, that you're not speaking as much as maybe I think you could. I'm discerning that you just have a need to express yourself, but you're not. If I, let's just say female, if Marty were to come along beside you and just walk with you and earn your trust, respect, such that she could very easily have you feel comfortable expressing yourself. Is it possible, and this I understand could be a very unfair question, but is it possible that had Marty intervened at an early age, that she could have at least helped you feel better about yourself?
I'm sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's an interesting thing because if Marty was a safe place for me and I could talk to her without feeling shut down or told something like, you shouldn't feel that way, you shouldn't do that, and, telling me that I'm wrong, but being able to listen first and figure out what the actual situation was and then pinpoint it, that would be fantastic. Now, our lives are lived forward. That's the direction that time goes, but it's often understood backward. Sometimes we don't recognize what the situation is until we look back a little bit. And so things sometimes happen for a reason. And for me, it took a very, very long time to be able to address these issues. But even though it was not enjoyable, I think it helped strengthen me because now I can help be a safe place for someone who has had those types of feelings. And so it qualifies me to become a safe place for someone else and to be able to help someone. Like if we go down that path of life, there are people behind us and there are people in front. So I might turn to someone like Marty and yourself and say, hey, what do I do? I'm here, 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 here. And then I also can turn around to the people behind me and say, I understand how that feels. I felt that way too before. And I believe that there is hope for healing. And to me, my message is just those two things. So, so simple. One, you're not alone. And two, there is hope for healing. When we feel stuck, when I felt stuck in that dark hole, when I felt stuck like I was invisible and I didn't matter, I thought that what was is what would always be. And the truth is there doesn't have to be any connection between what is and what comes next. We have a moment. There's a moment of choice. There's a moment of change. And that moment is right now. Right now, I can, instead of going in that straight path, if I just make that little angle adjustment, I can end up in a totally different place. So yes, for me, I think intervention at any earlier stage would have saved a lot of grief. And if I were in a better place than when all those hard things happened, I might have been more resilient and not fallen into that hole in the first place. I think when we're in a good place, we're able to be more resilient. And when we're weak and hard things happen, that's when we fall. That's when we sink. Very wise.
What are your thoughts about safe in the context of a safe person, safe place, safe environment, safety to divulge my innermost feelings because I'm not certain what my worth is. I'm not certain what you may think of me. Am I safe in expressing myself to you? Do I have the confidence I can express myself to you, overcome whatever shame I may have, overcome any feeling of uncertainty, what my worth is, but share with you what my innermost feelings are in a way that I can leave this conversation feeling very certain you are going to help me through the challenges I am currently experiencing. I'm going to encourage you to think through that, and I'm also going to encourage you to reach out to someone whom you think might need a safe space, a safe person to communicate with, and be that source of strength and safety that person needs. No, thank you. Several questions I want to ask you as a follow-on to that. Our listeners, I'm certain there's some who are saying, well, gosh, man, tell me more about your daughter, what happened. I want to save that for a moment. Talk to us a little bit more about a safe place. I am now thinking of that having a correlation with relationships. I'm thinking of that as having trust. You're able to talk and know that the person with whom you're interacting is not going to use anything against you, that the person with whom you're interacting knows you're important. They want to help you feel important, you matter, and so forth. I don't want to try to suppose what you're thinking about a safe place. Talk to our listeners, and from your life perspective, what constitutes a safe place?
Excellent question. And all of the aspects that you mentioned, I think are very, very important. One thing that matters to me is that I feel like I am valued by this person, that they are genuinely interested in what I have to say. I have a tendency, even still, that if I feel like someone doesn't actually care, there's no point in wasting words on them, you know. It's only if someone cares about me. I think that would be the first step. And then the next part of it would be someone who allows me to feel my feelings without judging or condemning or telling me what I should have done or could have done, or someone who tries to fix me from the outside rather than empowering me to be able to be resilient and handle my own problems. But someone who sometimes we just, when we hear that someone's having a struggle, we want to jump in and save the day rather than helping to build up the person who is inside the situation to be able to handle their own problems. So I think those are some of the aspects, but I think you're right on. I guess a safe place is a place where I feel safe being authentic and saying how I really feel and what I really think. And sometimes, like I say, life is lived forward, but understood backward. I might need a sounding board so that I can try to figure out where this root is. We have issues that take place in our life, and we have a feeling like it might be anger, or it might be frustration. And if you say, why? I'm not sure. I just feel that way. Sometimes it takes a little bit of talking to be able to figure out, where did that come from? Where did that root? And sometimes there might be an event that is a trigger event, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is a root that took place much sooner, or maybe that thing, that event, or that word or comment that took place reminds me of something that took place earlier, where even though the trigger is where I might get upset, that's not the real problem. The trick is working back to the root, and having that safe place to be able to talk and to discuss is a great way to be able to help identify what that root is.
Linda, you're very articulate in talking about and discussing aspects of coaching. We frequently call it peeling the onion back, but it is a matter of listening. It's a matter of devising open-ended questions to cause you to think, but we're listening. And we're listening to you. And what I'm doing is trying to build on your premise of a safe place. You feel comfortable expressing yourself, that the relationship is such that there is an aspect of trust. But I think for the listener is, and please tell me, one of the most important parts of making you or helping you feel comfortable is to listen. Spend more time listening
Absolutely.
than talking.
Absolutely.
And so as we listen to you, if you are in a safe place, my guess is, Linda, you feel free to express yourself that, well, haven't gotten to the core yet, but if you continue to make me feel comfortable, maybe I will express to you what the core problem is. And for our listeners, if they think I'm dwelling on something that's not all that important, I am building up to what I think, Linda, was some of your past, and not you felt that you had to mask things. I sense you are a very different person now than what you were earlier, and your resilience has grown over time. As you very eloquently alluded, this is a process. It's a ladder. It's not a rocket pulling you out of the pit. It was a climb the ladder, and it took some time. Am I characterizing you correctly?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I hope I'm changed and I hope I'm better. And one of the interesting things is, and I like to say that every journey to healing begins with hope. And part of the hope is an acronym. So the H is having a hunger for happiness, for healing. And I notice that when we're satisfied with the way things are, we just stay the same. O stands for openness. When I was struggling with depression, anxiety, I was tight, 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 like a little armadillo wrapped up in its shell. And they do that to protect themselves. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to protect myself. But we can't really heal until we open up a little bit. For me, one of the very first steps was just being open enough to admit to another person, hey, I'm not in a good place. The P stands for positive expectancy, and that is believing that there is a positive outcome that's going to come. And that was really hard because I was stuck in that deep, dark place where I didn't think that there was any way out. And it started with just the tiniest little glimmer of hope, a conversation that I had with my sister when I was contemplating whether or not to go. And I told her, I said, I kind of like to go, but I'm scared. I'm not in a good place. And she said, really? I had no idea. You always look so put together. But I understand because I felt that way too. But now I've learned how to these new tools and techniques, and I am genuinely happy and it's freeing. And that small conversation, she was a safe place for me. Where when I said, hey, I'm not in a good place, rather than telling me what I should have done, she said, oh, well, I felt that way too. And then she gave me that glimmer of hope that something had helped her and maybe it could help me. And it opened just that tiniest little sliver of positive expectancy that maybe something good could come. And the message I have is, yes, healing is possible. It is available and you can have it. And the E stands for empowerment. And empowerment, when we're struggling with feelings of or anxiety or victim mentality or any of those things, we feel power and we have to be able to get our and doing. So with all of this, as we're talking about relationships and how this puts together with being able to speak and being able to work with people, for me, that first step, that H, that having a desire, that hunger, it can't just be a little bit of a desire. Because when I felt like, hey, nobody loves me because I'm not lovable, I mean, of course, I didn't like that. That's not what I wanted, but I could still function. I felt like, hey, I can still function. But when I was in that place of darkness, like I can't even describe, I was desperate for help. Yes, I wanted something to change. No one can heal without their consent. Sharing that consent can be with that desire. To me, I say that there's a tipping point when we want to change more than we want to stay the same, then healing can begin. And for me, my basic brokenness of feeling like, well, I'm worth nothing, I'm not good enough, but it is what it is. I just, you just keep going. But when I was crushed and I needed help, the process took care of both of them. It took care of the crushed and it took care of the broken. And at any time that I could, that healing and those tools were available for me, and I could have been better. I could have been better than I was. I could have been happier than I was. I could have had more confidence and more self-esteem than I had before. But it takes a desire. And sometimes going through really hard things is just the catalyst we need to, catalyst turns into a catapult where you can go the other direction.
Talk to us just a little bit about hope. I'm guessing, Linda, in the beginning, early in life, if I were to kind of map out hope on a 10-point scale, maybe earlier in your life, your scale of hope may have been somewhere around a 0 or 1. Now it's probably 8, 9, 9.5 or so. And what I'm discerning from what you're saying, and I think our listeners are as well, is you know what it is to have hope, but the hope you have now, I'm guessing, took part of the learning process. It was a process. Again, it took time. Can you just give us a general idea? How much time did it have, if I accurately characterized you, from that period of low hope to a much higher useful hope?
Okay, that's a good question. So I would say where we're talking about how much time we talk about how this is a process and what can we do and how long is it going to take. I think it very much depends on the individual. I've spoken with people who literally have switched overnight because they believed the things that were being taught. When someone taught the idea that you have value, you have inherent value, and you are worth it, and then they just said, cool. And then all of a sudden it was an overnight change. But some people fight and resist that, especially if you're entrenched in ideas. So there's definitely going to be some variance. But I would say that within 30 days, you can make a significant, measurable difference in the way that you feel. So it doesn't mean that everything is all solved, because habits can be entrenched very, very deeply. But it has now been a few years since that deep, dark pit, and it just keeps getting better and better.
Linda, 3 topics come to mind, and some topics that I know our listeners would be interested in for future podcasts. One is, I don't feel I have the value that I should even have hope to have hope. And so I don't know that I'm a valued person. And we've spoken with many people who are just uncertain of what their value is, if they have value. And that could be a result of something said to or about them, which causes them to doubt. And that becomes an overpowering factor in their life. I'd be very interested in having you talk with us more, if you would be willing. How do we overcome that feeling of I'm not sure I have value, and that translating to positivity in hope? Another topic is your daughter. Will you very briefly introduce that? And she very clearly had some very serious injuries. And then a third topic is resilience. And maybe the third topic would be the resilience. You seem to have it now, whereas earlier in life you did not have it. And if resilience can be developed over a period of time and through a process, our listeners want to know how to do that, because there are some of us who are not as resilient as you are.
Isn't that wonderful? Oh, I'm so excited. So so you want to hear about my daughter real quick and then come back to talk about the other things. Am I understanding correctly?
That would be fine. I don't know how involved your daughter is, but if that's somewhat quick.
Oh, she survived.
Wonderful.
We got her to the emergency room and they got the bleeding to stop. So she survived that. What
was the cause of the bleeding?
It was a blood clot. I don't even understand why a blood clot would cause profuse bleeding, but it was horrible. And Ron, after coming home from the emergency room, and I had to clean off all of her sheets and blankets and put it in the wash, and then the water came up and it was all red. It looked like it was a bath of blood. And I just leaned over the washer and I just cried. It's horrible.
Oh my goodness.
But she's alive. It's okay. And it's all right.
Praise the Lord, that situation turned out the way it did. I'm incurably curious. Was that just a one-time blood clot, never to happen again?
Oh, well, if you're referring to that particular issue, that was a one-time thing. If you're referring to has life been smooth sailing ever since? No, she recently had surgery for a brain tumor. So, life continues to give us hard things. And that's why building up that resilience is so important, because I went through a process. I went through some hard things. And unfortunately, some of those hard things sent me down into a deep, dark hole. But the thing about life is it's not just one issue. And once we climb out of that hole, then life is sunshine and roses forevermore and rainbows every day. And life still brings challenges and problems. And that's why working on that resilience and trying to keep ourselves emotionally and mentally and physically healthy and have our relationships be healthy, so that we have that safe place and that community that can help us when we're having a hard time. Those things are so important.
Linda, another topic that Marty and I are working toward to try to develop, and I have no medical background, so I don't want our listeners to think that I'm approaching this from my medical training or anything. I'm not a psychiatrist. I am the antithesis of all of that by virtue of being a military person and aerospace engineer by education. However, we're very interested in mental health and just where that is. Some people misidentify, misapply mental health as a learning disability. Marty and I don't think of it in that capacity at all, but rather we do think of it in the aspect of positivity. Do you have the ability? Are you able to think more often positive than negative? And if not, maybe a tune-up on your mental health would be appropriate. But those are the kind of things, Linda, I think you are very versed in talking to our listeners.
Oh, that sounds lovely. And that's why I started my nonprofit called Hope for Healing. So in the meantime, before we have an opportunity to visit again, I invite your listeners to go to hopeforhealingfoundation.org. And we have free tools and articles and resources and books and audio courses, all for free. We would love to be able to help as many people as possible.
Linda, thank you. We do want to promote what you do for our listeners. Marty?
Linda, what is the name of the book you wrote?
I've written quite a few. One of them is Crushed, A Journey Through Depression.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I've also written You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. And 30 Days to a Better Marriage, 30 Days to Alleviate Depression, You Are Good Enough and I Can Prove It. And again, most of those books are available to download for free on the Hope for Healing website.
Good. Thank you.
Linda, thank you for sharing. Thank you for, use the term frequently, leaning forward to pass forward and advance others based on your life experience. Thank you so much. And we look forward to future episodes. You have a lot of life experience that can help our listeners advance.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Linda has a very compelling life story of having begun life, not knowing exactly where she fit, who she was, and there was a relationship with her mother that she wanted but lost because her mother felt abandoned, and it seems passed those feelings on to others in her family. But Linda overcame all of these feelings of insecurity and abandonment and so forth through relationships. I think that is the central theme of Linda's compelling life story, that the relationship with her mother degraded because her mother felt, it seems, a degree of insecurity, having been, I think her story seemed to be, abandoned by her daughter moving out, which then passed on to others. We can be a chain breaker, and I believe Linda is. I think Linda exemplifies exactly what being a chain breaker is. She was very articulate and very perceptive in saying we live life forward, but frequently we learn about life backwards. That is exactly how my life is. That I was uncertain why I was the way I was in an earlier life, being insecure, thinking I was dumb, stupid, socially awkward, and the like. But in looking backwards in life, rearward, just to learn from life, I think I know what the things were that caused those feelings with me. And as Linda's explaining, she too looked rearward and learned from life experience, and she's passing forward her experiences of life, what she has learned. And while it's projecting just a little bit, I do believe if we can intervene very effectively in a person's life to, as Linda describes it, be that safe person, safe environment, safe area where people can feel free to divulge their innermost feelings, because there are many of us who would never do anything, say anything to divulge who we really are, because we're uncertain of just where that information may go. But as we know, and as we develop that resolve that we are speaking with a safe person, that person has our best interests in mind, that person loves us and genuinely wants to advance us, I'm willing to tell virtually anything to that person, and I think that's the way most people are as well. I want to encourage each one of our listeners to develop that thought process of being the safe place, to be the confidant, be the person who's willing to walk beside and walk the journey with those who may be experiencing something less than healthy in life. In the context of health, I do believe that mental health is an aspect of this, and the mental health is an aspect of, as Linda describes it, the P in the HOPE acrostic, an aspect of positivity. Are we thinking? Can we frequently think positive thoughts? And if not, I think that's an aspect of mental health that we need to address. We need to work with others to help up-level their level of thinking. Linda is a chain breaker. She has chosen not to carry forward some of the things that have occurred in her life. I want to encourage each one of us to be a similar chain breaker. I hope we can warrant a 5-star rating on this podcast and the podcast series. We hope you will choose to subscribe to these podcasts that are launched twice weekly, Tuesday, Thursday at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Some people might need coaching to overcome some life experiences, and Marty and I are certified life coaches through the John Maxwell Enterprise. Let's schedule a 30-minute complimentary session to help you determine if we can help you through any dark places in your life that may be dominating some of your thought processes. Perhaps some of your thoughts are more negative than they are positive. Let's work through this. Let's work together. We hope that you will share this podcast with those within your circle of influence, your Facebook friends, your Instagram friends, your LinkedIn connections. Share with as many people as you can, because we know there are others that are experiencing what Linda has experienced. Let's work together. Let's help people overcome and be on the positive side of life, that we too, when we work together, can help everyone overcome whatever life mountain they are encountering. Let's work together, let's comment, let's share, and let's advance people. We look forward to working with you.